Good morning, goeiemorgen, dumelang. This is the 55th year that landbou is presented. 55 years. What a joy to have another year. Nation and Conversation, our 12th year, and this is a content creator, a mega content creator for agri and all the value chains. Friday is our best day. We have young faces here and we're happy to have you here. Anli, thank you for your stewardship and your anchorship, and thank you for the panelists that we have here. Enjoy the day. The glare of the lights and the cameras intimidate you at first, but then it's normal. So don't worry, it'll go right. Just stick with the truth. That will always set you free. Enjoy it.
Thank you very much, Francois. And thank you to all for attending this session. Fridays are always dedicated to the youth at Nation and Conversation. And like Francois said, we are absolutely thrilled to have some young faces and some fresh thinkers and people with a lot of big decisions to make. And hopefully the incredible people on our panel are going to help you find your passion for agriculture. I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. In case you don't know me, I'm Anli Hatting. I'm a news anchor for ENCA. To my left is Dr. Daniel Jordan. He is a senior lecturer in agricultural economics at the University of Pretoria. To Dani's left is Dr. Johnny van der Merwe. He's the managing director of AMT and Agri Optimum. In the center, Hester Barnard, Senwes Group Executive for Human Resources. To Hester's left is Dr. Frik Steenkamp. He's retired now, but he has an incredibly long and rich career as an agriculturalist and the principal of Westphalia High School in Klerksdorp for, I believe, more than 30 years, Doctor.
In two schools, yes. But
in two schools.
Westphalia, only 17.
Only 17, so that's incredible. To the doctor's left is Chris Koch, Group Executive for Risk and Insurance at Senwes. And to conclude our panel is Stian Klutter. He's the Manager for Technology and Strategy at John Deere for the Africa, Middle East and Asia region. I'd like to give each of our panelists a quick opportunity to tell our audience and those streaming and watching online a little bit about where your journey started, what you studied, how you got into agriculture, and how your journey has evolved to the position that you now hold. If you can kick us off, Dani.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andy. Yeah. So I started off as my life basically on a farm in the Karoo in Cradock. My dad was a sheep farmer, and so there my love for agriculture developed, and over the years basically remained interested in that. And then after school, I went to the University of Pretoria and then went into agriculture and then specialized in agricultural economics. And then I've proceeded to basically progress as an academic in the university. And so currently I'm lecturing and doing research in agricultural economics, agricultural value chains, agribusinesses, and we do a lot of projects, work with students and basically the industry. Yeah, and so my love is basically based on the fact that it's nice to work with farmers and communities that are in the rural areas, and also to spend some time developing students and making them ready for the market.
So apart from, for those of you in the audience who may not know, apart from shaping young minds at universities, the research departments at universities play an absolutely critical role in policy formation, in trying out new technology. They play an incredibly important role collaborating with big agricultural organizations and companies to plot the way forward for the whole sector. So if you're working at a university, you're not just a teacher, you are actively involved in agriculture. So thank you very much, Dani. Johnny, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I also grew up on a farm, so after I finished school, there wasn't really a place for me on the farm, so I couldn't go to the farm directly. And I feel that if you go into farming business, you actually have to make a contribution. And at that point in time, I couldn't make that contribution, I felt, and I went to study. I focused on agricultural economics, similar to him, and I progressed through the university, and I actually lectured for 10 years at the Northwest University. Recently, last year, at the end of last year, or the middle of last year, I stopped and I focused on my own businesses, and I think at heart I'm more of an entrepreneur, and so I like the challenge regarding that. So I think that drove me into that direction. So I got involved with AMT. So we do a lot of market information, and I'm actually a YouTuber as well, if you can call it that. So I know my friends' kids like that phrase, but in any case, we recently started another company, and I got involved in my dad's business. Or the farm, and in any case I'm farming in that sense. So there's a lot of a love for the agricultural industry at the moment, and I focus, that's where I feel at home. But I feel that there's a lot of opportunity within this. Although I couldn't farm as a primary producer, there was a lot of opportunity to work around that and develop my own stuff and just think of new ideas and trying to implement that.
Thank you very much. Hester.
Dankie Annelie. So ek was besonder bevoorreg om my loopbaan te begin in landbou. Heel onder in die koöperatiewe leer en met die nodige ondersteuning en ervaring en akademiese ondersteuning van Senwes kon ek myself dan nou voorberei vir die pos waarin ek nou is en gereed gewees het. So ek wil vir elkeen sê loopbaan is nie net 'n werk wat jy begin nie, daar's definitief 'n loopbaan wat jy kan volg. Dis nie net 'n werk nie. So as jy deel wil wees van iets groter, begin 'n loopbaan in landbou.
Dr. Steenkamp.
Baie dankie. Ja, ek het groot geword op 'n plaas op 'n gemengde boerdery daar in Groblersdal se wêreld. En dis waar my liefde vir landbou maar ontwikkel het. Ons is as klein seentjies op die trekkers gewees van donker tot donker. En in die kwartaal as ons moes huiswerk doen, dan as ma gesê het ons kan uit, dan kon ons gaan as die huiswerk klaar is. En so het die liefde maar ontwikkel en het ek daai tyd al besluit ek wil iets ernstiger met landbou te doen hê vorentoe. Op hoërskool was ek na 'n landbouskool toe, daar het ek besluit in graad 11 standaard 9 ek wil landbouonderwys gaan doen. So het ek gaan studeer en toe nou landbougraad gedoen, doen eers in agronomie en HOD en ek het gaan skool hou en dit was vir my baie lekker om deur die onderwys en landbouonderwys my passie vir landbou uit te leef en te doen wat ek graag wou doen. Dit het ek as onderwyser gedoen en dan ook vir 'n klomp jare as skoolhoof, wat baie lekker is en ek het dit regtig geniet en ek motiveer ook kinders om dit te doen, want dit is die moeite werd. En op die oomblik het ek nou, soos ons nou gehoor het, so pas my volgende fase van my lewe betree en dis vir my baie lekker, ek hou my besig daar.
Chris, so what we're hearing from a lot of our guests is that when you think of a career in agriculture, you might sort of tend to think about being a farmer, but you can pretty much pursue any career that is out there in a different sector. You can pursue that in agriculture. So HR, research, risk and insurance, and that's where you find yourself. Tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Ja, ek dink dis wat die industrie so ongelooflik eintlik maak. So my agtergrond is bietjie heeltemal anders. Ek kom van die stad af, van Johannesburg, Gauteng, groot geword. En ek het, toe ek nou self moes gaan keuses maak het wat ek op die einde wil gaan swat, was dit eintlik op die hoogtepunt van die 2008-9 finansiële krisis. En daai tyd het hulle gesê nee, risikobestuur, ekonomie, dis die roete om te gaan. Ek het toe by die Noordwes Universiteit Potchefstroom kampus gaan swat, ekonomie en risikobestuur, en dis eintlik waar ek lief geraak het vir die platteland, lief geraak het vir landbou. Ek het daarna, en eintlik het jy die persepsie, jy gaan nou swat en jy gaan by een van die banke of jy gaan by die fondsbestuursmaatskappye opeindig. En na my tydjie op die PIK het ek by Senwes begin. En eintlik maar so lief geraak vir die landbou, lief geraak vir die plattelandse gemeenskap. En myself maar so in die maatskappy opgewerk. Ek dink is 'n industrie met ongelooflike geleenthede. Dis 'n industrie wat nie 1 jaar dieselfde is nie. Ons dink jy kan 10 jaar in 'n industrie werk wat nie een van die 10 naaste by dieselfde was nie. En dis wat dit so opgewonde maak. En is 'n industrie en 'n sektor wat bly groei, en groei bring altyd geleenthede. So dis eintlik ongelooflik.
And risk management is an incredibly important part of the agricultural sector because farmers, there's so many variables. You never know what the weather's going to do. You never know what the financial markets are going to do, what consumers are going to do in terms of changing their purchasing preferences. So the guys who are involved in the finance sector in agriculture, trying to manage those risks and determine the risks and offer farmers financial solutions that enable them to produce food, play an incredibly important role. Stian, you're in probably what I think a lot of people will think of as one of the most exciting parts of the behind-the-scenes agricultural sector, and that's technology and mechanization. Tell us a little bit more about where that started for you.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, it all started, I also grew up on a farm, on tractors my whole life, and it felt like at times I slept more in the back of a case articulated tractor. It had a bench at the back of the operator seat, and I think I slept more hours there than in my bed when I was still very small. And yeah, so it all started there, and my passion and my love for the brand John Deere as well. And eventually went to university, studied mechanical engineering. And I always knew that I wanted to work for John Deere. And one day there was a position, I think they advertised at the Northwest University, the engineering building, they advertised the role. And one of my friends actually saw it, and I think in my room, in the digs where I stayed, there was a John Deere poster at that time. And one of my friends saw the ad, and they thought that Stian needs to work there. He's the right guy for that job. And got the call and the interview, and the person who called me wanted to spell the name of on his email. He spelled his name and then said the company spelling. Do I know how to spell? I said, yeah, it's on my buckle. I'll just check on my buckle. So very passionate about tractors, machinery, and agriculture, and also didn't have the opportunity to farm. Would have loved to farm. And so I worked for John Deere for a while, and then I wanted to register professionally. I'm an engineer, so I wanted to register, and I couldn't at the time with John Deere. It's a sales and marketing branch in South Africa, and we closed down the factory in Nigel in 2006, and the manufacturing unit went to Mexico. So I haven't had an opportunity at that time, so I left the company and I started working in renewable energy project development, which is also kind of close to agriculture on feedlots. Feedlot manure used for methane gas generation, and entered the world back into agriculture. Always, the next step was always a step closer to agriculture. And yeah, so I was excited to join John Deere again, and the current position that I'm in, the exposure I'm getting is that John Deere is a very conservative company. You think of iron and you think of machines and the service that's required to have those machines running. But in the back end, we've got climate change and all things happening, and windows of operation that squeezes and margins that squeezes, and all of that requires for a customer, for a farmer, our customer, to remain profitable and sustain his business. You have to be able to make decisions much faster, and that involves things like artificial intelligence and the rest, and how you can leverage data and measuring of certain things on the farm. To measure is to know, and how do you take that and provide the answers that your growers need. That's the piece where I'm playing around with to find the value, and not the value necessarily only for the large farmers and the large machines that we see out there, but also for your small grower. Yeah, so it's very exciting.
And when you say things like AI and data, then suddenly everyone's ears pricks up and they go, oh, I know all about that. So there's a huge scope for technology playing an incredibly important role in the future of agriculture. And technology is going to offer so many more solutions for the kind of challenges we see. I just want to highlight two things that came out there. One, you don't have to have grown up on a farm or have a family farm to get into agriculture. And B, again, there are so many spheres, career opportunities within agriculture that you don't have to live in a small town or in a farming community to work in agriculture. There are positions everywhere. And I think out of the people who work sitting here, there's probably a very good balance between people working in farming communities and people working in the city. Just to tell you a little bit about my journey into agriculture, I studied drama. and still ended up in agriculture. So in the media space, there is incredible opportunity to create content and to talk about the important issues within agriculture, to make TV programs, to facilitate events like this. So if that's your passion, but you also have a love for agriculture, there is lots of opportunity. I want to start off by just talking a little bit, and if you could probably kick us off, Dr. Steenkamp, with agriculture offered at school level. You've had many years of experience with schools, and subject choices and early exposure is still something that there are challenges with, where the communication doesn't get through to young people early enough so that they can make the right choices for their future.
Ja, dit is 'n baie interessante onderwerp eintlik, en ek kom nou jare uit die gewone landbouskole onderwys, waar 'n landbouskool met 'n plaas en 'n boerdery en alles daar is. Ek onthou toe ek hier by Westfalia kom vir die onderhoud vir die pos jare terug, toe sê iemand op die beheerliggaam vir my, jy moet net nie kom mielies plant op ons skoolterrein nie. Toe sê ek, nee, ek moenie bekommerd wees nie, want jy kan nie landbou doen in die dorp nie. Nou die interessante is, wat toe gebeur het, ek het na tyd het ek, en ek dink dis maar uit die aard van die saak, want mense geweet het, ek kom met 'n landbou agtergrond uit, het kinders en selfs ouers begin navraag doen, maar kan ons nie landbou aanbied nie? En ek het aanvanklik gesê, nee, ons kan nie in die dorp nie, dit werk nie, ons het nie 'n plaas nie, ons het geen fasiliteite nie. En die navraag het aangehou, en ons het toe besluit, maar kom ons vind uit. En op die einde van die dag het ons besluit, ons wil dit doen nou om te kan 'n nuwe kurrikulum by 'n skool begin, moet jy aansoek doen by die onderwysdepartement, en jy moet in 'n vak soos landbou of 'n studierigting soos landbou moet jy bewys lewer, hoe gaan jy prakties doen, want dit het 'n groot praktiese komponent, en ons moes 'n model ontwerp, en wat baie uniek is, om landbouonderwys, en ons bied die volledige landboustudierigting aan met al die vakke, in die middel van die dorp. Hoe gaan ons dit doen en die prakties daarvan ook saam doen, sodat daar nie skade lê nie. En ons het toe saam met die Noordwes Onderwysdepartement 'n dokument opgestel van hoe doen jy landbouonderwys in 'n dorp. Ons het eintlik verskillende modelle toe nou beskryf, en ek dink ons is een van die eerste skole in die land wat dit so begin doen het, en met groot sukses. Dit gaan regtig goed. Ons doen 'n klomp goed met ons kinders, buite op plase, op die skoolterrein. Ons het ons eie boerderytjie op die terrein, waar dit regtig goed gaan. So dis heeltemal anderster as die tradisionele landbouskool. Maar ek dink nie ons kinders ly skade as gevolg daarvan nie. Ek dink regtig ons het die geleentheid om by topboere in die omgewing uit te kom, waar dit regtig goed gaan en waar die kinders die regte goed kan sien en kan sien hoe dit moet werk. Hulle doen hulle praktiese take daar, en ons gaan nou daaroor ietsie sê. En ek dink as mense so 'n bietjie praat oor die persepsie van kinders. Kinders is, wat nie op 'n plaas groot word nie, is baie onkundig oor landbou. En ons het dit veral gesien toe ons begin het met die landbou, en niemand weet iets daarvan af nie. Want hulle word nooit blootgestel aan nie. Maar ons het gevind by die skool, waar die kinders betrokke raak by die landbou, of dit neem, of deur middel van jeugskou, raak hulle opgewonde en hulle begin landbou verstaan. En hulle persepsie vir landbou of oor landbou verander. En verander baie positief. En dit is baie goed, en ek praat oor die praktiese deel, en wat ons dan doen is, ons gee die kinders blootstelling aan 'n verskeidenheid van opleidingskursusse, graangradering, graanhantering, grondbewerking, by teelersgenootskappe wat beoordelingskursusse aanbied, wolklassering, bokhaar, gradering ensovoorts. So daar's 'n klomp sulke goed wat ons doen. Die kinders neem deel aan die jeugskoue deur die hele jaar. Dit word 'n klimaks by die nasionale skou in Oktober elke jaar, en hulle geniet dit verskriklik, en dis vir my altyd so mooi om te sien hoe hierdie kinders, om dit maar so te sê, so 'n band vorm met daai dier van hulle. Dan sien jy baie keer foto's, en lê die dier in slaap en die kind lê bo op die dier in slaap. Die tipe van dis ongelooflik om dit te beleef. Daar's kinders wat uit die dorp uitkom wat nie geweet het van dit nie. So ek dink die landbouskole speel 'n baie groot rol om ons jeug bloot te stel hieraan. En ek dink dit is belangrik dat dit moet gebeur.
Donnie, you work with students every day. Perhaps tell us some of the challenges that you've experienced with people not not knowing about the right choices to get into the kinds of programs that are available if they don't have that information early enough.
Yeah, so I think that's a very important point when we think about exposing students and getting students into the workplace and into studying at the university. So I think we do find that students don't have enough information to make choices in terms of their courses or their sort of subjects at school level. And then when they arrive at university, also sometimes not yet certain. But obviously the universities do try and make a lot of effort to reach out to students, and they do a lot of effort to put out open days and visit schools and attend events. But I think there's still a space where the communication can still flow a lot more. And I think it also is trying to link the endpoints to this space. In other words, showing students where the work where the work environment is, what sort of companies can you work for, what are the options. And I think even a discussion like today is extremely essential to be able to do that, to showcase the possibilities that there are, firstly. Secondly, I think it's also we see that the students arrive and they've not known how big or important the agricultural sector is. So only when they realize, they start studying this, and they realize, okay, but it's a massive industry and there's so many options that they never knew of. So that's what we get quite often, is that they don't realize how important it is or how big it is. So I think it's all about information and just connecting. So connecting the dots between the students, the training institutions, the universities, the research, and then, of course, the workplace.
And I think some advice would possibly be that if you have an interest, and if you're here, it's more than likely that you are interested to some degree in agriculture. It's never too early to start asking, because, like we said, there seems to be a disconnect where the information doesn't get to young people early enough. But if you have that spark, there are so many companies who are willing to share information with you. Hester Senbes actually reaches out to schools to try and get that information to young people earlier. Tell us very briefly about the kind of information that you share with schools.
So die sekondêre landbou waar ons dan nou operate is eintlik 'n organisasie soos enige ander organisasie. So ons het van HR reg deur IT, 'n legal departement. So ons werf baie groter, want ons werf ook vir die maatskappy. Wat belangrik is in die landboubedryf wat kinders nie altyd besef nie. So om 'n studierigting te gaan kies om te gaan swat is een ding, maar soms kom ons by skole, dan werf ons vir vakleerlingskappe by ons John Deere, by ons werkswinkels, dan het kinders byvoorbeeld nie wiskunde nie. So dis klein goedjies wat ek sê, kry die geleentheid, kry genoeg inligting so vroeg as moontlik om seker te maak dat jy kan deelneem aan iets soos 'n vakleerlingskap, want jy sal moet wiskunde hê. Ander goed soos met die leerlingskappe is daar ook bepaalde vakke wat jy moet hê. So ek moedig aan almal wat hier is vandag, gaan hoor vir die spesifieke beroep wat jy wil doen. Daar's definitiewe vakke wat jy sal moet hê om deel te neem.
Yeah. And for the large majority, am I correct in saying that if you want to get into agriculture, there are very few professions where maths and science are not required? I mean, they would be required as part of agricultural economics, agronomy, plant science, animal health, mechanization, the financial elements. Those would all be things that would be required. So maths and science are critically important for anyone who wants to look at the agricultural sector. Johnny, perhaps you can give us some ideas about entrepreneurial opportunities. You've been through the academic road and you're working for yourself now. And I think that's a space where a lot of people want to end up. More and more people want to be in charge of their own destiny. So tell us about the opportunities there are.
Yes, I just want to come back to the maths. When we were at university, I think a mom phoned me and she said, I just signed my child's or my letter that he can move away from maths, so he can leave maths, and I said go to the school and just please cancel that letter, because a lot of the subjects, BSc, BCom, engineering, everything, it's really reliant on maths, not literacy, normal maths. And science, if you have a interest in science, you can for BSc courses, you can move into science, but there's different. But maths it's so important, as you mentioned. I think I went on to basically I did my master's after I got my degree, and I did my PhD. And I think at that time I did my PhD, I really focused on industry problems, specific industry-related problems. So I really wanted to make a difference in the industry. And my study was actually used by Grain SA to negotiate better terms for the farmers. But that was a main focus for me. So that was something that really triggered me and motivated me. And then I got involved in AMT by chance. And as soon as I got involved in that, it really triggered something in me. I think the entrepreneur inside me, it triggered. But there's so much opportunities within this industry, and it's the constant challenge to create new. But I think if you move into entrepreneurial space or any space that you have, if you're an employee at Sinwes, everywhere you are, you need to add value. If you can't motivate the value that you add, it's not a sustainable project that you have. So within AMT and Agri-Optim, as you mentioned, my main focus is not necessarily monetary or money driven. I think that is a result when you add value. So if you can add value, if you can really help a farmer make better decisions in terms of his profitability, help him to improve his decision making in terms of his inputs, that's really an issue at the moment. I think then you will add value, and then there will be value that will be created in terms of the result will be monetary value, or the company that grows, or whatever. But I think if you focus on making money or wanting to be famous or whatever you want to do, then your base is, you've got the wrong base that you want to build this from. So I think if your base is value added driven, then you can really grow something.
Possibly to put that in a different way, we look at our unemployment figures, and I think for a young person that must be incredibly daunting, looking at the world, knowing how many people, qualified people with skills, who are still unemployed and struggling to find work. It must be incredibly scary. So one of the things that you could possibly do to try and make sure that you do find employment one day and that you can be in charge of your own destiny is to look at some scarce skills. What are the things in the agricultural sector where we don't have enough people? Silo managers, veterinarians, and perhaps we can talk briefly about those skills, give some of our viewers some ideas about where they're looking, and not just currently for the next 10 years, because we know technology is going to change the landscape drastically. So if you could just throw some ideas into the hat, what are the kinds of things the kind of jobs that we need now, the scarce skills?
Annelie, as ek kan begin, ek wil net terugkom om te sê, dit gaan oor die wiskunde. Ons kan nie strei nie, wiskunde is baie belangrik. Ja. Maar vir die landboustudent wat vandag hier sit en nie miskien wiskunde het nie, in die groter landbouondernemings is daar daarom rigting, soos byvoorbeeld as jy in bemarking wil gaan, dieremedisyne verkoop, jy weet, in die winkels, daar is rigtings vir dit ook. So ek wil nie hele moet uitstap in sak en as en jy's in graad 12 en jy kan nou nêrens betrokke raak nie. Net om terug te kom by die skaarsvaardighede, by ons in die groter landbouorganisasies is dit maar silobestuurders. Wat silobestuurders so uniek maak is dat dit 'n opleiding is wat jy net by 'n landbouonderneming of organisasie kan kry. Begin as 'n graadgradeerder, genoeg ondervinding en eindig dan as 'n silobestuurder. In die tegniese areas is dit dan ons vakleerlingskappe wat dan trekkerwerktuigkundig is. As julle hier loop hier op Nampo sal julle sien die groot masjinerie wat hier staan, iemand moet aan hulle werk, so dit is ook definitief 'n tekort. En dan sal ek sê vir die toekoms is dit definitief dataverwerking, analitiese vaardighede. Want oral waar jy kom, vertel mense vir jou vir die data wat hulle bymekaar maak. Al daai data moet geanalyseer word. So ek voorspel dat oor 10 jaar gaan ons definitief 'n tekort, nie eers 10 jaar nie, 5 jaar definitief 'n tekort hê aan persone wat data kan analyseer.
So mechanical services, data and analysts, silo managers. Chris, perhaps you can give us some idea in your sector if there are any scarce skills.
Yeah, I think in our sector it also comes back to the data, and I know industries are collecting all of this data, and you continuously the world of work is going to change. AI and computers and robots are going to take over your place, but I think there's still a very big part for the human, especially if you've got that passion behind it, and for the human element behind that. there's a big role to play for us in this industry. I think if you go to any agri-tech event that you host, there's a lot of young people that is trying to solve the normal everyday problems on farm level. And I think that's also a very big part where young people can get involved just to solve these basic everyday problems that we do have, especially on the technical side. Because we know people would want to go to the cities and the big lights, work for the big banks, work for the big industries. But on farm level, on a technical level, the ability to work with your hands, the ability to understand something, the ability to interpret something, and the ability to get the way where the world of work is going, to interpret it in such a way that people can understand it. I think that's the most important part as well.
Perhaps we need to spend a moment just talking about the environment as well. I think this generation is incredibly aware of the fact that we need to protect the resources we have. And in that also lies amazing opportunities to get involved in agriculture. A farmer, and I can't think of who it was now, I heard it secondhand, said, God made the soil once. The soil that we have, that's what we have to work with for the rest of the longevity of this planet. We only have the soil that we have. We can't suddenly make new soil. So to take environmental factors into consideration and to really safeguard those resources, water, energy, that's going to create all kinds of new opportunities. So that's perhaps something to think of from my side as well. Dr. Steenkamp, what do you see from the young people that you've worked with through the ages? Is there a tendency to go in specific directions and not sort of think out of the box for these new exciting opportunities?
Ja, ek wil nou, ek het nou gesit en dink aan, toe julle nou praat oor die skaars vaardighede, wil ek nou eintlik die appelkaars 'n bietjie omgooi en begin by die begin. Ons sit met 'n enorme krisis in die onderwys. Dit is ons hoor baie van skaars vakke soos wiskunde, wetenskap, rekeningkunde. Ek het nou as oor 30 jaar as skoolhoof het ek nog nooit na een van daai vakke so gesukkel om te kry onderwysers as landbou nie. Daar is nie landbouonderwysers nie. Op hierdie stadium is daar geen daar het een universiteit nou weer begin, maar daar was geen instelling wat landbouonderwysers opgelei het tot nou toe nie. En dit is 'n enorme krisis wat ek nou al baie gedoen het en wat baie skole maar doen, is om ons eie landbouonderwysers by die skool te maak. Ons lei hulle op, ons leer hulle dat hulle landbou kan gee. En ek dink as ons kan by die punt kom waar ons in al die skole wat landbou aanbied, goed opgeleide, passievolle landbouonderwysers kan kry, wat weer die kinders motiveer, dan gaan ons dalk 'n groot klomp van die res van die probleme dalk aanspreek. So ek dink dit is nogals belangrik. Die kinders wat ek net nou gesê het ook wat ons blootstelling gee by die skool, stel baie belang en hulle wil graag daarin as hulle net weet daarvan, maar hulle weet nie altyd daarvan nie. Baie van ons kinders weet presies wat hulle wil gaan doen, is nie noodwendig in die landbourigting nie, maar is in ander vaardighede, maar wat in elk geval in die landbou toegepas kan word. So dit is goed, maar ek dink daai spesifieke liefde kweek vir landbou of die hele landboubedryf, dit is baie belangrik en ek dink ons moet daarna kyk en ek dink ek wil sommer hier 'n bietjie arrogant wees en regtig 'n beroep doen op die instellings wat opleiding doen, onderwyseropleiding om te kyk na landbouonderwys en gos in landbou. Dis wat ons nodig het, want dit is regtig 'n krisis.
Donnie, how we see career trajectories or career paths move has changed drastically. 20 years ago, you still found people who'd been working for one company for the majority of their life, or perhaps they'd worked for one or two different companies. These days, young people need to be far more flexible because in all likelihood, you're going to work for more than 5 to 10 companies during your lifetime across different sectors. Where do young people build the resilience and the flexibility to make those kind of quick changes from one sector into another?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting question because, again, you sit with students that are, I think they've probably grown up in a space where they have needed to be quite flexible. And so we see that students tend to be quite able to pivot. into different sectors, and then they are quite mobile with their skills. So they're able to move their skills from being a bona fide banker, for example, to moving into an agricultural space. So I think it comes with the times, and also with the sort of having the flexibility of being comfortable with change. And I think traditionally also we've probably focused on staying with companies and staying in a specific role, and we found some comfort in that. But I do think that in the current environment where our young people are probably exposed to a lot more change, it also makes them very comfortable to actually pivot quite easily. And I think it's also a skill that they should be open to be flexible and to find ways to be resilient and to build that within yourselves and your capacities, yes.
So being open-minded about opportunities in different sectors or different parts of the agricultural sector. And I think another thing that's changed the career landscape or the employment landscape has been COVID. We've seen so many more people working from home, working on different continents. So you could be working for an agricultural company based in Australia, but your office is in your house in Klerksdorp or wherever you find yourself. And those opportunities really do open up the world to people in South Africa. And I think training, is very important, but like you said, that flexibility to pivot from different perspectives. Perhaps we can talk about the challenges with accessing job opportunities, because it's one thing to be very well trained, but if you don't know about the companies either offering training, let's face it, university is expensive. Not everyone these days has the opportunity to just go and study what they want and they know that it's financed. A lot of people have to access bursaries or training schemes offered by large companies. So Hester, maybe you can give us some ideas there of good ideas for people to access those opportunities.
So wat persone definitief moet na kyk is en by mense aanklop by groter landboukoöperasies, landboubesighede is om te kyk na definitief beurse vir skaarsvaardighede, dit word definitief aangebied. Dan as jy miskien nie wil gaan studeer nie, daar word baie leerlingskappe aangebied, vakleerlingskappe wat jy voor kan aansoek doen. En as jy dan klaar afgestudeerde student is, word daar gereeld graduate programme aangebied, wat jy dan geen ondervinding voor nodig het nie en enige landbouonderneming dan kan begin werk. So daar is baie geleenthede, maar alles is uniek aan verskillende besighede. So ek moedig almal aan, gaan klop aan, gaan hoor wat is beskikbaar, want daar's definitief beurse, daar is die tipe goed beskikbaar. Jy moet net baie navorsing daaroor doen, gaan baie by webtuistes en van maatskappye, baie inligting word daar versprei. En begin vroeg, moenie begin werk soek Oktober maand nie, begin baie vroeër in die jaar. Dit word baie vroeër al geadverteer, die sluitingsdatums is baie vroeg. So gaan so vroeg as moontlik en kyk na die geleenthede.
Stian, I want to come to you because accessing opportunities is not just about financial means to study. Accessing opportunities, there are also lots of socio-economic dynamics at play. And there is a general perception that agriculture in South Africa is still dominated by white men. And largely, that's because of our country's history. But I want to get some feeling of excitement from you about opportunities for everyone in South Africa, people of all different religions, backgrounds, genders. I mean, tell me a wonderful story about a black female mechanic who's wiping the floor with all the guys. I want to feel inspired.
So yeah, there are opportunities, and the way we look at it as an organization, if from enterprise level in the US down to what we experience in South Africa, is you need a diverse team looking at a problem. We want to solve complex problems for our growers to have them do more with less. That's what we aim to do. And to have like-minded people around the table that look at a problem and see the same answer, you're not going to get to that creative answer that's really going to leapfrog you into the company that you aspire to be, and if you want to remain a leader in your industry. You're not going to do that with like-minded people around the table. So within our organization, when you look at our makeup locally in South Africa, you'd be surprised. I think if you look at the photo, what you said we expect, and we assume that that's what agriculture is. If you look at a company photo of John Deere in South Africa, responsible for Africa, Middle East, you'd be surprised. And it's amazing to see the value, and we come from that background, we can be honest with each other, and we're used to that, and we came out of it, but to see the value that a diverse, and I'm not talking about diverse in color and diverse in gender, diverse in anything, diverse in your way of thinking, diverse in meaning, and there's a creative person that didn't study maths, that comes to the table, and the ideas that come to the table, it's just incredible, the approach to a problem. And that's what we see. We want to be problem solvers, and we want to come with the best possible solution, and then there is a place for anybody.
So essentially, don't be put off by general perceptions out there. And just as a woman, I think it's so incredible having come from outside of agriculture. I've only been involved in agriculture for about 2 years, so I'm really still very fresh, know very little about the space, but learning every day. And the amount of incredibly strong females in agriculture in different positions, female scientists, researchers, agronomists. There's so many incredible women in data and technology development. And they're really giving the guys a go. And I think there are going to be more and more women interested in the agricultural space. So, don't be put off and think it's a man's world. It absolutely isn't. You can wear fellies and put your foot down just as well as any of the guys. I'd like to talk a little bit about the growth of the agricultural sector, because people in the audience, young people wanting to know that they have a stable, long-term opportunity to enter the sector, want to know, what is it going to look like in the future? What am I getting myself into? Is there room for growth? Or is agriculture going to be under more and more economic pressure, to the point where we have more and more farmers unable to produce sustainably, more and more companies who aren't able to export? And I know the picture looks incredibly positive, but perhaps we can share that. Johnny, if you could give us a sense of the scope in the sector.
I immediately thought of the phrase is don't miss the opportunity of a good crisis. And if we, and especially for somebody entering into an industry, there's new ways to think about a crisis. The old ways doesn't necessarily apply anymore. You need to think fresh. How do we approach this? It's a changing environment. We need new energy into a specific problem. We're moving into a difficult period. I think personally, I'm thinking in terms of global economic growth. There's a lot of issues currently coming out. There's a lot of pressure on. Most likely will be a lot of pressure on the margins of farmers. So what will that do? It will create new opportunities to make sure that they do better planning, that they, in terms of financial planning, mechanization planning, any planning in terms of their future. So there's and a lot more information, but you need data, but you need to convert that into information to make sure you can help farmers, but also not only farmers. You can't just stay at the primary industry and think this is where it ends. I think it's the base. We need to make sure that is sustainable, profitable, to make sure we feed the rest of the industry. But issues at the moment currently with Eskom and the load shedding, everything, it's creating a lot of additional costs in the value chain. So it's resulting in the let's say the primary, the commodity price, to be further away from the retail price. So the consumer is still paying a high amount, but the producer is getting less at the moment. So what can we do to rethink this value chain, to make sure that we shorten the value chain or make it less expensive, and then we can move into cooling facilities, and you can really have, you can basically think of anything you'd like. AI, technology, anything that you can do to make sure that we can keep this primary sector profitable, but ensure that the consumer still gets the, So there's so much opportunity in this industry.
Chris, if I can come to you, if we don't, we've talked a little bit about scarce skills, we've talked about how important the agricultural sector is to the country, and I think just to emphasize that point a little bit, if you look at history, you'll see that countries where food security has become a major challenge, and there's some examples, Sri Lanka is a very good example, where that happens, that is the turning point where you start seeing social unrest, instability, and where the country really starts falling apart. The systems that are in place to govern a country just cannot hold things together when people simply don't have food. So agriculture is absolutely vital. It plays an incredibly important role in the future of South Africa. But if we don't attract young people, if we don't sell agriculture to young people as well, because you can't only expect the young people who have a passion for agriculture to come into these positions, we have to almost tell all young people, hey, you might not have thought about it, but think about agriculture. What happens if we don't do that effectively? What does the future look like and what are the risks?
Ja. Nee, ek dink dis veral 'n risiko wat ons baie streng na kyk. As jy gaan kyk voedselsekuriteit en die eintlik bekostigbaarheid van voedsel in ons land speel 'n kardinale rol en dis 'n ding wat ons baie fyn dophou want ons weet wat kan die nagevolge daarvan wees. En ek dink net as jy kyk na die industrie en ek dink vat van die COVID periode as jy gaan kyk die sekere industrie, die industrie wat eintlik diep negatiewe siklusse gehad het, landbou en die staatsdiens en ons weet hoekom die staatsdiens is eintlik die enigste twee industrieë wat nie negatief gedraai het nie, wat eintlik sywaarts begin beweeg het en landbou baie positief gedraai het. As jy kyk hoeveelheid kommoditeite en ons het hierdie week ook gehoor wat ons netto invoerders van was wat ons nou begin uitvoer, maar niks van hierdie gaan moontlik wees as ons nie die industrie saam vorentoe vat nie. Niks gaan moontlik wees as ons nie hierdie jong talente inkry wat kan sê hoorie, wat is die volgende stap? Hoe vat ons die voedselsekuriteit wat ons opgebou het? Hoe vat ons dit verder? Hoe verseker ons dat die nie sekere rolspelers ons eindvoorrade besig is om uit te voer dat die risiko in ons land is nie? En gelukkig in die vrye markstelsel behoort daai goed homself uit te speel, maar ons weet omdat dit eintlik so 'n kardinale rol in ons land speel hoe belangrik dit is. So jong talente, nuwe denkers is baie belangrik, maar ek dink is ook baie belangrik en ons het gesê die jong mense hoe resilient hulle is en hoe vinnig hulle wil verander. Landbou is bietjie anders en landbou het baie lang en diep siklusse. En jy moet daai siklusse kan verstaan om oor 10 jaar nog hier te wees vandag, want as jy goed doen vandag en môre hou dit op reën en die dag daarna reën dit nie en die dag daarna reën dit nie, elke dag word dit net al hoe erger en daai langtermyn impak is eintlik vir ons land van kardinale belang en hoe bly ons dit beskerm? Ek dink as jy kyk hoe baie van die jong seuns en jong vroue wat oor see gaan, wat vir 'n jaar of 2 daar gaan boer, baie goeie vaardighede opbou en baie van hulle kom terug, hulle gebruik daai vaardighede hier in ons land om op die einde van die dag ons sektor te bevoordeel wat eintlik ongelooflik is.
Dani, I quickly want to touch on value chains because we've talked now about, agriculture isn't just primary production. We've talked about some of the management and support structures needed for the industry as a whole, but we haven't talked yet about all the career opportunities down the value chain in processing, in packaging, in logistics and transport. Give us a sense of how important that part of the industry is and what opportunities lie there.
Absolutely, Annie. So I think that's, again, a key feature of the value chain that we need to sort of highlight. If you think about primary agriculture, it's probably contributes about 3% to the GDP, but if you look at the whole processing and the whole value chain in terms of logistics, retailing, etc., I think about 30% of our economy sits in that part of the value chain. So it's actually quite enormous. And as you rightly point out, it's from the input provision of seeds and fertilizers, insurance, banking, right through to the processing, the transport, the storage, the distribution, and the marketing. So I think it's critically important, and we often miss the opportunity that sits in that space specifically. And if you think to it, you think to yourself, how many of us do actually purchase our food from anywhere else but a supermarket? So there's a whole system that sits behind a supermarket to actually get food to your table every day of the week, fresh at a good price and conveniently. And there's a lot of space in terms of having opportunities through all of the career options that they are on the table to basically do something within that space. So I think that's something we miss, and we shouldn't forget about the opportunities that sit there, yeah.
Added to those opportunities are also the people who play an incredible role in policy development. Usually they're also involved in the research space, but you'll know, if you've been reading up a little bit about agriculture or following the news, that the Agricultural and Agro-Processing Master Plan has been signed just last year. And the people involved in developing that plan, they also play a critical role in the sustainability of the sector. The people who make sure that food safety technology is there, that all the regulations are complied with. So there's you could go on and on for hours listing all the roles that people play. I do want to start wrapping things up to give all our panelists an opportunity to give perhaps a piece of advice from your own personal experience to all our audience members and those watching online. And after that, then we'll take some questions from the audience. I want to start with you, Dr. Steenkamp, because we're not just speaking to young people who have perhaps already entered tertiary education. We might be speaking to younger people who haven't had that exposure yet to, agriculture as a subject at school. What is your advice to them if they've got some inkling that, hang on, this is something that there's this need in me to learn more?
Ja, wat my bietjie bekommer op skoolvlak waar ons so werk, is dat ek het net ook gesê kinders weet nie regtig wat aangaan nie. Maar ek dink nie selfs volwassenes is altyd baie positief oor landbou nie, want ek dink hulle weet ook nie wat aangaan nie. En ek dink ons moet by 'n punt kom waar ons regtig ons kinders motiveer. Landbou is een van die mees dinamiese vakgebiede wat daar is. En daar's soveel verandering. Elke jaar is daar nuwe goed en as dit nie bly nie, gaan dit nie werk nie. En dit weet ons almal. En ek dink dit is wat ons aan die kinders moet verkoop van 'n jong stadium af, dat hierdie dinamiese vak waar daar regtig vooruitgang is, wat maak 'n mens opgewonde. Dit is daar's soveel uitdagings, daar's soveel wat voor lê en waarin jy kan betrokke raak. En my bekommernis is dat baie keer is die persepsie daar dat die landbou studierigting of die landbouvakke is maar so 'n bietjie 'n minder belangrike tipe van vak. Die ouetjies wat nou baie goed is in wiskunde moenie eintlik landbou neem nie. Dis die ander ouens. En dis glad nie die waarheid nie. En ek dink dit moet reggestel word. Ons moet reggestel word dat ons soek juis hierdie top passievolle ouens wat in die landbou ingaan, want landbou is 'n wetenskap. Ons kan nie boer soos 30 jaar terug nie. Dis 'n absolute wetenskap waar ons nou is en jy soek daai top ouetjies. En ek dink 'n mens moet daai gedagte van regtig 'n besondere studierigting, studieveld, dit verkoop aan die jonges, sodat hulle besef maar wow, hierdie is iets wat ons mee kan vorentoe gaan.
If you've never encountered precision farming before, do yourself a favor, go read up a little bit about what farmers in South Africa are doing, and you'll come across a lot of information that will tell you that our farmers in South Africa are world class. They are competing with top farmers all around the country in terms of precision farming. And as Dr. Steenkamp rightly said, agriculture is not just a food production sector. It is an absolute science. So that we need top level people in the field. Stian, perhaps you can give us your last thoughts, some advice to anyone who wants to be, or sort of who aspires to have a similar journey to yours.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think what I heard from Johnny is have that basis or that platform from which you want to build your career, whether you're entrepreneurial or not. If you can add value somewhere, be true to yourself. I think let me start there. Be true to yourself, whatever you are aspiring for, chase that, have that goal and that mindset, and the opportunities will come. You won't necessarily see the end game from day one, but have that goal set up and start somewhere. And if you do not necessarily are in grade 12 and you don't have maths, that's still okay. It's obviously a good thing to have, but if you don't have it, it's still good. And you have the mindset, you have an interest in agriculture, so you will learn fast enough to get with the program and to start adding value. So I would just say be true to yourself in any career, not just in agriculture.
Thank you. Hester, some final thoughts from you, advice for young people?
mense weet ongelukkig nie van poste waaraan jy blootgestel is. Dis hoekom ek altyd almal aanmoedig, lees soveel as wat jy kan oor iets waarin jy belangstel, soos wat hy sê, bly truth to yourself, weet waarvan jy hou. Daar's so groot verskeidenheid van poste in landbou beskikbaar, sodat daar eintlik 'n plek vir elkeen is. As dit dan nou nie by 'n groter landbouorganisasie is nie, is dit definitief dan in primêre landbou, maar ons moet soveel as moontlik mense aanmoedig om in die industrie te kom. Daar's definitief 'n geleentheid vir almal en vir almal om 'n groot verskil te maak.
Dani, perhaps you can give us some last words.
Absolutely. So I think my sort of perspective is that in the next couple of years, we're going to have to feed 9 billion people in the world. A lot of those people are going to be on our continent, close to where we are, and I think there will definitely be opportunities across the whole value chain. So I don't think there needs to be any doubt about the opportunity. Now it's just a case of positioning yourself, making sure that you've got a runway to get to the positions where you want to be. And I think I'd also encourage everybody to reach out, to the companies, to reach out to the training institutions, universities, to equip yourself with as much information as possible to be able to get onto this pathway to secure either a position or a business within this environment.
Just as a quick aside, for someone who wants to, they know they want to be in agriculture, but they're not quite sure which part of agriculture, but they're at that point where they have to make a choice about a study direction. What's a good foundation of training where you can branch off from? Would that be BSc or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in basic sort of science-based agriculture, it's definitely a BSc degree. All the better if you're able to do a degree that's maybe focused on agriculture, so a BSc Agric, that's definitely much more focused on agriculture, and you'll start getting the exposure into all of the basic agricultural sciences, crop production, animal production, economics. So that to me would be a great base. The alternative is of course then just a normal BSc where you get exposed to the basic sciences.
Great. Chris, some last words from you.
Ja, ek dink dit gaan oor, en ons het gesê, jy moet lees, so wees nuuskierig, maar op die regte plekke. Ek dink, 'n mens is ver verby wat jy skool toe gaan en na skool gaan werk en 30 jaar by dieselfde plek. Hou aan jouself verbeter, hou aan studeer, wees nuuskierig, lees die regte bronne. Ek dink, as jy kyk in landbou, Agbus, BFAP, Johnny hulle by AMT, Wandile, hulle het eintlik household names geword. So bly wees nuuskierig, moenie die nuus en die inligting wat jy op Facebook altyd lees vertrou nie. Gaan kyk na hierdie regte bronne, organiseerde landbou, gaan kyk na landboubesighede, lees die inligting wat hulle beskikbaar het. As jy op daai plekke fokus en jy bly nuuskierig, dink ek het jy baie goeie kans.
Just to add on to that, technology also makes a lot of conferences, strategic discussions available to the public. You might not know about them, but if you follow a couple of these big companies, you'll see some of their major events are available to the public to watch online. And there's so many media houses covering specifically agricultural events, and you can just walk around Nampo today and see how many camera teams there are here, and you'll know that there is a wealth of agricultural content online where you can hear incredible insights and knowledge from people in the industry that can guide you, not necessarily in terms of employment, but you'll learn so much more about the sector, and that will perhaps give you some clues as to, oh, hang on, that excites me. He's talking about something that I want to be involved in. So go on YouTube, follow the right people. Johnny, perhaps you can give us some last words of wisdom.
Ja, daar's twee goed wat ek dadelik aan dink. Ek het Michael Phelps se dokumentêr op Netflix of iewers gekyk. En hy is so goeie swemmer is omdat ek dink sy natuur, sy lyf, hy's gemaak om 'n swemmer te wees. Hy gaan nie 'n langafstand atleet, hy sou nooit in sy lewe Olympics 'n langafstand atleet gewees het nie. Maar ek dink gaan vind jou passie, gaan vind wat by jou pas. Want as jy nie daai passie gaan hê nie, dan gaan jy gaan nie gaan groei net nie, jy gaan nie daai energie insit nie. En dis waar ek nogal gefokus het en ek het dit ek hou so baie van wat ek doen. So dit voel nie vir my soos 'n dag van werk nie, maar weer eens vind daai passie en dan binne in dit Gaan maak seker jy verstaan die, ek kan amper sê die taal van landbou. Landbou is 'n baie unieke industrie van hoe dinge gebeur, hoe dit verstaan. As jy 'n IT developer is, gaan maak seker jy verstaan die prosesse binne in landbou. Dan gaan jy waarde toevoeg binne in jou bedryf en dan gaan jy iemand soos 'n John Deere jou dubbel betaal, want jy verstaan die industrie beter as die ou langs jou. So maak seker, jy verstaan die landbouindustrie eerstens, en dan as jy nou, ek dink, dalk meer 'n praktiese raad is, as jy gaan swat of jy doen enige kursus, gaan kry prakties, as jy nou teoretiese goed gaan doen, byvoorbeeld by ons, toe ons nog by universiteit was, as jy vakansie by die huis lê en jy is verveeld oor hoeveel Netflix dokumentêre jy al gekyk het, of hoeveel series jy gekyk het, dan doen jy iets verkeerd. Vakansiewerk, al werk jy in 'n warehouse, al gaan doen jy iets wat jy weet jy nie van hou nie, dan gaan jy uitvind, hoekom jy nie al van hou nie, en jy weet, dis ook al iets wat jy gaan weet, ek wil nie in daai industrie ingaan nie, so dit is ook al, jy leer ook al iets uit dit uit, maar gaan kry ondervinding en verhoudings, die landbouindustrie gaan oor verhoudings, netwerk, kyk iemand nie hoe skit sy hand, en ek dink verhoudings is sekerlik die enkel belangrikste ding in die landbouindustrie, wat jy kan doen, so kyk iemand gaan doen, vakansiewerk, kyk iemand nie hoe, dan is die helfte van jou onderhoud in elk geval al klaar gedoen.
And if you're walking around Nampo, you'll see what Johnny is talking about. People are connecting with each other all the time. You see farmers who haven't seen perhaps this seed supplier in a year because, that he hasn't managed to get out to since the last Nampo. And they shake hands and they have conversations about their families. And that's a big part of agriculture, is people making connections with people. And as someone new to agriculture, well, the one thing I have experienced is no one tells you that's a stupid question. No one has ever said that to me. And I've asked what I thought were some pretty dumb questions. Because if you come from a place that's outside of agriculture, you simply don't know. So, but hang on, why are they planting this and not that? They'll tell you straight up. Oh, what's the difference between this implement and the one with the big spikes on? They'll tell you. So don't be afraid to ask questions all the way through the process. Don't be afraid to meet people. And if you're worried or not sure how big the opportunities in the agricultural sector are, all you have to do is try and walk in the next hour from the one side of Nampo to the other side, and you'll see such a diverse range of people offering services and products that you'll get a pretty good idea that agriculture has incredible opportunities, a wealth of incredible people, and it needs young, dynamic people to take it into the future. Please, if you have a question for any of our panel members, raise your hand. We'll get you a roving microphone so you can ask. There we go. We've got one question in the front already.
Good day. De Villiers from Marula Media. I want to know, what is your feeling on young people that leave the country, either and staying somewhere else?
Is that for a specific panel member or just in general?
Oh, general.
Who would like to address that?
I can comment on it. So we, what we're experiencing and our dealers are especially experiencing is on the technician side. That's painful. We develop some of the best technicians globally, and we've heard recently in a meeting from our colleagues in Canada where one of the agenda items on the wall was recruitment of South African technicians, and so we do train and we do have some of the best people in the world. So well done on that, but there's a risk associated to that.
Look, it's difficult as well because that's a problem that agriculture can't solve alone. That's a South Africa problem. And in a lot of the discussions we've been having this week, whether it's about rural rejuvenation or finance models or value chains, there are significant social challenges we have to deal with. People don't feel safe. People feel, hang on, I don't know whether I want to raise my children in this country because where are we going? And I think there, for young people, perhaps the answer is every one of us needs to get involved. Nobody can sit and point fingers and say, oh, well, it's a government problem, or it's a political party problem, or it's a specific provincial problem, or Johannesburg is unsafe. Every single person needs to get involved, active citizenry, public-private partnerships, all these catchphrases, social compact. These are the only ways that we're going to keep South African young people in South Africa to build the country going forward. I think agriculture plays an incredibly important role in that.
Yeah, for instance, for what I do, I think in Australia and America, there won't be an opportunity like that because there's certain stuff that's not being done, let's say, by the department, and that's information and stuff like that. So there's a lot of opportunities within South Africa as well that you can't just look at the issues, the problems, look at the news all the time and get negative. Go and see why is that issue not working, what is happening here, and you can create solutions around that, and you can actually create a job around that, create a job around if you look at security, water purification, everything. There is private companies that started based on problems that couldn't be solved, and I think that creates, from entrepreneurial side, that creates so much opportunity within South Africa, and that's what I told the students all the time. They wanted to go overseas, and tell them, go and get experience, that's fine. But if you really want to have the opportunities and think of problems anew, and I probably think that's why our youth are so valuable internationally. They work hard and they can think of problems in different ways. They don't wait for government to solve their issues, they go and solve it.
True.
And there's nothing wrong with going overseas and gaining experience and bringing that wealth of knowledge back to South Africa, because ultimately I think everyone who lives here, and it sounds all fluffy and airy-fairy, but everybody wants to make South Africa a better place. For your own family, for your children one day, for the people living in your community. And being young really gives you an incredible chance to do that. Any more questions? Yes.
Ek is Werner Gronje van Hoërskool en ek wil net weet, as hoërskoolleerlinge, wat kan ons doen om onsself bloot te stel aan soveel as moontlik inligting en geleenthede om eendag die regte keuses te maak as ons nou in 'n landbourigting beweeg?
Hou op Netflix kyk.
Anlie, wat ek dalk vir hom kan antwoord is om kom job shadow. So as jy in iets belangstel, kontak, daar's altyd geleenthede om te sê, ek stel in iets belang, kom werk vir 2 of 3 dae, kyk wat mense doen. Jy leer baie vinnig of jy van iets gaan hou of nie gaan hou nie. Kyk vir vakansiewerk, soos hy gesê het. Daar's altyd geleenthede beskikbaar, kyk waar jy kan inkom. En jy hoef nie eers noodwendig geld te verdien vir dit nie. Sê net jy sal verniet kom werk, net om te kom leer. So ek moedig altyd iemand aan, want almal het altyd 'n illusie oor 'n bepaalde pos of 'n werk wat ek graag wil doen. Maar jy weet nie presies nie, en tot jy die dag begin studeer, dan besef jy, maar dis glad nie wat ek wil doen nie. So ek moedig regtig jong mense aan. Werkgewers is bereid om jou te help met job shadowing, skakel, wat ons julle daarmee kan help.
And if you show up with an honest, earnest willingness to learn, and you ask questions all the time, it doesn't help you show up for a job shadowing experience and you do the work, but you don't ask any questions. So you've sort of almost got to make yourself vulnerable, put yourself on the line, be willing to ask the questions, and call people out if they tell you it's a dumb question, because there's no such thing. Anyone else with a question? You have no questions about what you should study, where you should study, which universities have the best programs in agriculture? Right. There's a question. Well done.
Hallo, ek is Stokkies van Hoërskool Westfalia. En ek wil net weet, moet jy landbou as 'n vak vat om, kom ons sê, enige beste landboukundige of so te wees?
Dis nou op skool, né?
Ja, tannie.
Dr. Steenkamp.
Weet jy, ek dink nou sommer terug aan toe ek nou landbou studeer op die universiteit en ek was in 'n landbouskool. So die eerste 2-3 maande het ons so 'n bietjie 'n heads-up gehad oor landbou, jy het geweet waaroor dit gaan. Die ander ouens wat in gewone skole was, het nie geweet nie. Maar hulle het opgetel. So nee, dis nie noodsaaklik nie. Jy gaan dit optel, jy gaan dit definitief kan leer. Dis nie jy het nie die bus gemis as jy nie 'n landbouvak op skool geneem het nie, maar dit help die aanvanklike begin. Help dit vir jou want jy het so 'n voorsprong bo die ander ouetjies wat dit nie weet nie. En dis lekker en dan gaan jy aan. Maar dis nie krities nie.
Daar's nog 'n vraag.
Môre, ek is Henko Meinhard van Hoërskool Wesvalia. Ek wil net vra, Tannie het nou gepraat oor die AI en so. Kan Tannie dalk meer voorbeelde gee soos hoe dit in hierdie rigting gebruik kan word?
Absoluut. Stian, daar is jou in jou ballpark.
Dis 'n baie goeie vraag en daar's soveel plek en geleentheid vir so iets soos die artificial intelligence dan nou. Baie goeie voorbeeld wat ek dan nou kan gebruik is iets soos ons Combine Advisor produk op 'n stroper, waar die stroper deur die land, ons ken al die stroperkaart en wat vir die opbrengs wys soos wat jy met die GPS deur die land gaan, en dan om verder te optimiseer, jou graan wat er dan af van die land afhaal, gaan in die graantank, en as jou siwe en jou konkawe nie reg gestel is nie, die spoed is nie reg en die druk is dalk te hoog op die graan, dan gaan jy van jou graan begin beskadig. So daar's 'n kamera op daai pyp na jou graantank toe en dan een wat uitgaan agter. En hulle kyk heeltyd of vermors jy pitte agter by die stroper uit en of breek jy dalk pitte. En daai verstelling gebeur konstant en maak seker dat jy nie een pit beskadig nie, ook nie een pit op die land mors nie. En dit is 'n vorm van artificial intelligence waar 'n kamera vir jou visueel kan sê waarmee jy besig is en intyds daai verstellings kan maak. Ag, en dan is daar soveel ander voorbeelde met byvoorbeeld die gasspuit wat jy sal sien op ons standplaas wat homself bestuur. Hy het nie meer 'n sitplek op nie. Ons autonome trekker waarvan ons die kamera sensors op die agter wat op die standplaas is, hy het nou weer 'n visuele inset, maar daar's nie 'n operateur betrokke nie en die ding moet weet wat hy doen en hy moet weet as daar gevaar in 'n land is en moet kan stop soos wat 'n operateur sou stop. So daar's soveel plek vir toepassing daarin.
If I can add to that, perhaps another area where there's incredible advancement in technology is digital monitoring. And there have been companies that have developed the most incredible apps where you have sensors watching your cattle, drones counting your cattle to combat stock theft. At the same time, you have sensors on your crops, monitoring growth, the irrigation systems. All that information comes together on the app that interfaces with a financial element of this app that tells you, oh, but hang on, because of the soil quality, you're going to need fertilizer very soon, but in the quantity where you haven't got enough cash flow, so you need to go and ask for a loan. So all of these things are coming together in incredible ways and that's what we mean when we say data and technology are going to play an increasingly important role in making sure that the whole of the agricultural sector is not only sustainable, but that we can grow and we can be more efficient and we can look after the environment better. But yeah, there's lots of stands here at NAMPO where you can see technology in action and where you can see examples of AI helping farmers do what they need to do. There's another question.
Hallo julle, ek is Jean-Pierre Koortse, ek kom van Hoërskool Wolmaranstad. Ek wil net graag weet, soos watter soorte wat soorte leerlingskappe is daarso beskikbaar in wil soorte in soorte landboumaatskappye.
Okay, so Annelie, die vraag oor leerlingskappe gaan dan oor verskillende vlakke, so daar's verskillende NKF levels. So ons het leerlingskappe binne in ons interland by ons retail winkels wat gaan oor agri retail. Dis NKF 2 en NKF 3 en dan tot op 'n sekere vlak NKF 5 en dan in ons graan hanteringsafdeling het ons dan nou NKF 2 graanhanterings leerlingskappe op tot NKF 5. So daar's redelike leerlingskappe beskikbaar. Dit gaan dan nou van baie junior tot senior leerlingskappe.
So what you'll find is that a lot of agricultural organizations will have either a CSI or a training component where they get company benefits and tax rebates based on how well they give back to communities, the kind of projects and initiatives they run to bring new people into the sector. So you will find organizations that have funding set aside specifically for bursaries for students. And that can be at undergraduate level or for people to do their master's or their doctorate. There are learnership programs right across the country from different organizations. So that might not just be specific to the grain industry, that'll be in KZN specifically for the sugar industry. You'll find it in the red meat industry where they specifically want to draw young people in, and then they're putting funding aside to make sure that the access to education and to training is there.
Yeah, so I think that's absolutely true, and I think I think we also underestimate the importance of technical training. So I think a lot of people focus on university training, and that's necessary to access the job market. But we are in big need of a lot of skills in the technical environment. People that can make machinery, repair machinery, work in the abattoirs, manage the meat quality, manage the grain quality. So there's a big space in that environment and a lot of training that's needed to be able to fill those spaces.
Absolutely.
Annie, ek weet nie of kan ek dalk net almal weet nie altyd wat is 'n leerlingskap nie, so as ek dalk net vinnig vir hulle kan verduidelik. So 'n leerlingskap het jy nie noodwendig dan 'n naskoolse kwalifikasie nodig nie. En dis eintlik die geleentheid waar jy 'n kwalifikasie binne in 'n werksomgewing kan kry, die nodige akademiese agtergrond en tegnies. So wat jy dan daarmee uitstap na 'n jaar of 'n jaar en 2 maande is dan met 'n kwalifikasie. En dis 'n nasionale kwalifikasie wat jy nie net by die spesifieke landbouorganisasie waar jy dit gedoen het kan gebruik nie, maar by enige ander organisasie in die land. So dis 'n formele kwalifikasie.
Uitstekend. Thank you all so much for attending this session. I'd like to thank our panelists again for your insights, your wisdom, for sharing your experiences and your journeys with us. Thank you for attending. Thanks to everyone online. For anyone who is envisioning or considering a career in the agricultural sector, if there's one thing that I've seen that would make it very worthwhile, it is the warm, warm-hearted, inviting, welcoming, down-to-earth people who are all putting in work every day to try and build a wonderful sector and a better country and a secure food future for all of us. So read up, find out more, look for those videos on YouTube and put yourself out there to get the right information and never be afraid to ask what you think might be a dumb question. Thank you and have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of Nampo.